The night was cold in the mountains. The cabin stood alone between the dark trees, far away from towns and people. The wind howled like a wild animal, and snow covered the ground in heavy layers. Inside the cabin, a man sat near the fire. His name was Daniel. He lived a quiet life in these mountains. Most nights were the same: silent, lonely, peaceful. But this night would change his life forever. Daniel poured himself a cup of hot coffee and listened to the storm outside. The windows shook with every strong push of the wind. He pulled his blanket tighter around his shoulders and sighed. He liked silence, but sometimes silence was too heavy. Sometimes he wished for a voice, even for a stranger to knock on his door. He did not know that soon his wish would come true in a way he could never imagine. At first, he thought he was dreaming. It was a sound that didn't belong to the storm, a heavy thud, like something or someone had fallen into the snow outside. Daniel frowned. He waited, listening carefully. Then he heard another sound, a weak cry almost lost in the wind. He stood quickly and grabbed his flashlight. His heart beat faster. No one came to this mountain during storms. Who could it be? A traveler? A lost hiker? He pulled open the wooden door, and the freezing air hit him like knives. The storm almost pulled the door out of his hands. Daniel stepped outside. The snow crunched under his boots as he pointed the flashlight at the ground. At first he saw nothing but white snow blowing in the wind. Then, his light stopped on something strange. A shape. A body lying in the snow, not moving. He rushed closer. It was a woman, or at least she looked like one. Her skin was pale, almost glowing, and her hair shimmered in the light like silver threads. Her clothes were torn, not like any clothes he had ever seen. They were made of a strange material, shining faintly even in the storm. Daniel dropped to his knees. "Hey, can you hear me?" he shouted over the wind. Her eyes opened slowly and Daniel gasped. They were not human eyes. They were larger, brighter, glowing faint blue like the stars. She looked at him with fear and pain, and her lips trembled as she whispered something he did not understand. For a moment, Daniel froze. He had read stories about strange lights in the sky, about aliens visiting Earth. But this was real. A living being, not human, lying outside his cabin in the snow. He shook himself out of shock. Whoever or whatever she was dying in the cold. He could not leave her here. Without thinking more, Daniel lifted her into his arms. She was lighter than he expected, fragile, almost like a bird. Her skin was cold, but when he touched her, it felt as if tiny sparks of electricity danced under her skin. He carried her inside the cabin and kicked the door shut behind him. The warmth of the fire filled the room, but the woman still shivered violently. Daniel laid her on the old couch near the fire and covered her with his blanket. He could see her chest rise and fall weakly, each breath shallow. She tried to speak again. Her words were broken, mixed with sounds he had never heard before. Then one clear word came through her trembling lips. Warmth. Daniel's heart pounded. She needed warmth. That much he understood. He quickly threw more wood into the fire, until the flames grew taller, casting long shadows on the wooden walls. The woman's glowing eyes followed the fire. She reached a thin hand toward it, almost in awe, as if fire was something strange to her. Daniel noticed strange glowing lines running across her skin, like patterns or markings, shining brighter when she stretched her hand toward the fire. He stepped back, unsure. Was she dangerous? Could she hurt him? He didn't know, but one look at her face told him she was weak, scared, and alone. For a while, the cabin was silent except for the crackling fire and the storm outside. Daniel sat in the chair across from her, watching her carefully. His mind raced with questions. Who was she? Where did she come from? Why here? Why his cabin? And most important, was she alone? The thought made him shiver. If she had fallen from the sky, then maybe others were out there. Maybe they were looking for her. Maybe they were already near. The woman suddenly opened her eyes wider. She stared at him, her glowing pupils sharp and clear now. Then she whispered again, more strongly. This time, not safe. Outside. Daniel's blood ran cold. He turned his head toward the window where the storm raged. Was something else out there in the night? Something that followed her? The fire flickered, and the cabin felt smaller, trapped between the storm and the unknown. Daniel realized this was no ordinary night. His quiet, lonely life had just turned into a dangerous mystery, and it had only begun. The storm outside did not stop. Snow hit the windows hard, and the wind howled as if the mountain itself was alive. Inside the cabin, the fire burned bright, but the room still felt cold. Daniel sat close to the couch, watching the strange woman he had carried in. Her skin still glowed faintly, and the strange markings across her arms pulsed like veins of light. For a long moment, he did not move. His mind argued with itself. One side told him this was impossible, unreal. The other side told him it was real and dangerous. But the woman's weak breathing pulled him back. She was alive. She needed help. Her lips trembled again, and she tried to speak. The sound was soft, broken. It was not English, not any language Daniel knew. Her words flowed like music, but were sharp in the end, almost like crystal breaking. He leaned closer, trying to understand, but the only word he caught again was the same as before. Warmth. Daniel threw another log into the fire, and sparks rose into the air. The flames grew taller, brighter, filling the cabin with light. The woman's glowing eyes followed the fire. She lifted her hand slightly, as if reaching for it, but her strength failed, and her hand dropped back onto the blanket. Daniel took a deep breath. "You're safe," he said softly, not sure if she understood. "You're inside. You'll be warm now." The woman blinked slowly, as if trying to read his face. Then she whispered something in her strange voice and tapped her chest lightly. The word she spoke was clear this time. Elira. Daniel realized it was her name. He nodded slowly. Elira. He pointed to himself. Daniel. Her glowing eyes softened, and for the first time she gave a small, tired smile. She had understood. But Daniel's relief did not last long. A sudden sound outside made him freeze. It was not the storm this time. It was something sharper, more mechanical. A low hum that rose and then disappeared. Elira's eyes widened in fear. She pushed herself up weakly and whispered fast words he could not understand. But her meaning was clear. Danger. Daniel grabbed his flashlight and moved to the window. He wiped away the fog on the glass with his hand and looked out. The storm was thick, but for a second he thought he saw lights moving between the trees. Not lanterns, not flashlights. Blue, glowing lights that moved in patterns. He stepped back quickly, his chest tight. "What the hell is out there?" he muttered. Elira's hand reached for him. She pointed toward the fire, then toward the door. Her lips formed the word again. Not safe. Daniel's mind spun. If she was running from something, then maybe whatever was outside was searching for her. Maybe they were already close. He sat down again, forcing himself to stay calm. "All right, Elira," he said slowly. "You're safe here. No one is coming inside." He reached for the old hunting rifle he kept near the door, just in case. He hadn't used it in years, but tonight it felt like his only shield. Elira's glowing eyes studied the rifle. She shook her head slowly, almost sadly, and whispered something he could not understand. Then she placed her hand against her chest again and repeated softly, "Warmth. Only warmth." Daniel frowned. Warmth. Why was it so important? She wasn't just talking about fire. He could feel it. Her voice carried weight, like warmth meant life itself for her. He leaned closer. "You mean heat? The fire?" He pointed at the flames. She shook her head and tapped her chest again, then touched his arm lightly with her glowing fingers. Her touch was strange, not painful but electric, like tiny sparks crawling under his skin. Then she whispered again, "Warmth, life." Daniel pulled his hand back, his mind racing. Did she mean she needed his warmth, his body heat to survive? Was that why she came here? The storm roared louder, shaking the cabin walls. Daniel glanced at the window again. For a moment he thought he saw a shadow pass by. Not human. Too tall. Too thin. His stomach dropped. Elira's eyes followed his. She whispered something fast, urgent. Her markings glowed brighter now, as if her fear made the light inside her stronger. Daniel gripped the rifle tighter. "Who's out there, Elira?" But she only whispered the same word again. "Hunters." The word cut through the air like ice. Daniel's throat went dry. Hunters. Not animals. Not people. Something else. Something that was after her. He looked at her glowing eyes, her weak body wrapped in his blanket. He could feel the weight of a choice pressing on him. He had brought her inside, and now whatever hunted her might come for both of them. The fire cracked loudly, making both of them jump. Daniel sat back down slowly, trying to think. He had lived in these mountains for years, and he had faced storms, wild animals, even near-death accidents, but nothing had prepared him for this. An alien woman asking for warmth, mysterious hunters in the woods, and his quiet cabin turning into a battlefield. Elira closed her eyes again, breathing shallow. The glow in her skin faded a little, and Daniel realized she was losing strength fast. She needed more warmth, more than the fire could give. He wrapped another blanket around her and placed the chair closer to the fire. For now, he would keep her safe. But in his heart, he knew the storm outside was not the real danger. Something was coming, something that would not stop until it found her. And maybe, when it did, it would find him too. The fire burned higher now, throwing shadows across the wooden walls. Daniel sat close to the couch, watching Elira. She lay still, wrapped in blankets, but her glowing eyes opened now and then to look at him. The storm outside had not ended. The wind screamed like voices in the night, and the snow struck the cabin with endless force. Daniel rubbed his hands together, staring at her. He had so many questions. Who was she? Where had she come from? And who were the hunters outside? But, most of all, he could not stop thinking about the word she kept repeating. Warmth. Elira shifted weakly. The glowing patterns on her skin flickered, like fire dying into ash. She looked at the flames and whispered in her broken voice. Heat, life. Daniel leaned forward. The fire keeps you alive. Her eyes met his, and for a moment they were sharp, clear, almost human. She shook her head slowly. Her hand moved, weak but sure, pointing at the flames, then pressing against her chest. Daniel tried to understand. Not just fire. Inside warmth? Her lips trembled into a faint smile. She nodded. Daniel's throat went dry. She didn't just need the fire. She needed something deeper. Something he still didn't understand. For a long while they sat in silence. Only the fire spoke, its crackling filling the room. Then Elira slowly lifted her hand again. Her fingers glowed faint blue, and when she pointed at the fire, the flames suddenly grew taller, brighter. Daniel's eyes widened. "You did that?" he whispered. Elira closed her eyes, weak from the effort. The flames returned to normal. "Not fire," she whispered slowly, forcing each word. "Energy, spirit." Daniel felt a chill down his spine. She wasn't just afraid of the cold. The cold was killing her because her kind lived on energy, heat, spirit, warmth, maybe even human warmth. He stood up and paced the room, his boots heavy on the wooden floor. "This is insane," he muttered. "You're not just lost, you're running. And whoever is chasing you knows you're here." As if to answer his words, the sound came again from the woods. A faint hum, like machines moving between the trees. This time closer. Daniel froze, listening. Elira's eyes opened in alarm. She whispered one clear word. "Hunters." Daniel's stomach tightened. He moved to the window, wiping the glass. At first he saw only snow. Then he saw it. Blue lights moving between the dark trunks. Not lanterns, not flashlights. Cold, artificial. Lights glowing and searching. He stepped back, his heart racing. They're here. Elira pushed herself up on the couch, though her body trembled. The markings across her skin glowed brighter now, warning like fire in the night. She pointed toward the door and shook her head. Daniel grabbed the rifle from beside the door. He had hunted deer, fought off wolves, but this was something else. He didn't even know what he was preparing to fight. Elira's voice came sharp this time. No! She pointed at the rifle. Not help. Daniel frowned. Not help? They're outside. What else am I supposed to do? Elira pressed her hand to her chest, then to his. Her touch was electric again, making his skin prickle. Her glowing eyes locked with his. Warmth. Shield. Daniel blinked. Shield? Did she mean his warmth could protect her, or even fight against the hunters? He shook his head. It made no sense, but her eyes told him it was true. The cabin shook suddenly. A sharp sound, like metal cutting through the air, pierced the storm. Daniel dropped low, his rifle ready, but Elira pulled him back. Hide, she whispered. The light outside moved closer. Through the cracks of the window, Daniel saw a tall, thin shape. Its body shimmered like glass and metal, its head glowing with blue light. It moved slowly, scanning the snow. Searching. Daniel's breath caught. This was no human. This was no animal. It was something alien, built to hunt. Elira closed her eyes tightly. Her markings glowed brighter, pulsing faster. Daniel realized she was trying to stay alive, to fight the cold and the fear. But her body was too weak. She could barely sit up. He knelt beside her, whispering, "What do they want? Why are they after you?" Her lips parted. The word came out like a ghost. Fire, heart, stolen. Daniel frowned. Fire heart? Stolen? He wanted to ask more, but the sound outside grew louder. The hunters were moving closer to the cabin. Elira grabbed his arm with surprising strength. Her glowing hand pressed against his chest, and she whispered, "Trust, warmth, protect." Daniel looked at her, his heart pounding. She was asking him to trust her, to believe that his warmth, not his weapon, was the shield against the hunters. The cabin walls shook again. The fire flickered wildly as the storm raged harder. Shadows moved outside the window. The hunters were near. Daniel stood, gripping the rifle with one hand, staring at Elira. She lay back on the couch, her glowing eyes filled with fear and hope at the same time. For the first time in years, Daniel didn't feel alone in his cabin, but he also didn't feel safe. The storm, the hunters, the alien woman, it was all too much. And yet he knew there was no turning back. He had opened his door to her. Now the hunters had found them both, and the secrets in the firelight were only beginning to unfold. The cabin felt smaller with every passing second. The storm outside raged on, but now the howling wind was no longer the only sound. The low humming noise returned, steady and cold, moving through the forest like a hunter's song. Daniel gripped the rifle tighter, his breath uneven. Elira lay weak on the couch, her skin glowing faintly, her strange markings pulsing like dim light under her skin. Her eyes were half closed, but when the sound came again, she opened them wide. With fear, "Hunters," she whispered. The word cracked in the air like ice. Daniel swallowed hard. He had lived through blizzards, through nights when bears prowled near his cabin, but nothing had ever felt like this. The presence outside was not natural. It was calculated, searching, hunting. He moved to the window again, wiping away the condensation with his hand. Through the storm, he saw the lights. Blue beams scanned the trees, cutting through the snow as if looking for something. And then, one of the beams paused, right on his cabin. Daniel ducked fast, pulling the curtain shut. His heart pounded in his chest. "They saw us," he muttered. Elira sat up weakly, shaking her head. "Not see, not yet. Smell Energy. Her words puzzled him. Smell energy? She touched her glowing markings and then pointed at the fire. They feel warmth. They follow. Daniel's chest tightened. That meant the fire that kept her alive was also a signal to the hunters. They would be drawn straight to it. He looked. At her. She was pale, shivering, her strength fading. If he put out the fire, she might die. But if he kept it burning, the hunters would find them. The storm howled louder, rattling the cabin door. Daniel stood frozen between two impossible choices. Then Elira's weak voice broke the silence. You. Choose. Fire for me. Or dark. Safe. Daniel clenched his jaw. He couldn't let her freeze to death. Not after everything. He threw more wood onto the fire, the flames crackling high. If danger was coming, he would face it. Elira's eyes softened. She leaned back on the couch, her breathing steadier with the heat. But the glow outside the cabin grew brighter. The hunters were closing in. Daniel checked his rifle, though deep. Down he knew bullets might not matter. Still, the weight of it in his hands gave him courage. He turned to Elira. Why are they after you? What do they want? Her eyes flickered with pain. She whispered slowly, searching for words. They steal fire. My people. Heart of fire. Taken. Daniel frowned. Fireheart? Elira touched her chest, right where her glowing patterns shone brightest. Here. Warmth. Life. Then she looked at the window with dread. Hunters take. Use. Kill. Daniel's throat went dry. These hunters were not just searching for her. They wanted what was inside her. Her life force, her warmth. The sound outside grew sharper, like metal scraping against wood. Daniel's skin crawled. They were at the cabin now. He whispered to himself, think, think. He had survived every kind of threat in the mountains by using his head, not just strength. If they could sense warmth, maybe he could trick them. He grabbed an old lantern from the shelf and lit it. The flame burned weak but steady. He opened the window just a crack and placed the lantern outside in the snow, away from the door. Then, he blew out the lantern's flame quickly, letting the smoke drift into the storm. Elira's eyes followed him, questioning. Daniel whispered, Maybe they'll follow the trail. The sound outside paused. For a moment, silence. Then the hum moved, shifting away from the cabin toward the faint smoke trail. Daniel let out a shaky breath. It worked, but Elira shook her head, her voice sharp despite her weakness. Not long, they smart always return. Her warning was right. Minutes later, another sound cut through the storm, a sharp metallic strike like claws against wood. The hunters were testing the cabin now. Daniel tightened his grip on the rifle. His heart thundered, but he forced himself to stay calm. He had one job, to keep her safe until he could figure out more. Elira's glow dimmed again. She looked at him, her eyes filled with both fear and trust. Help me, she whispered. Not fire only. You. Daniel's chest tightened. She didn't just need fire. She needed his warmth, his presence, his energy. He didn't understand how it worked, but the truth was clear in her eyes. He sat down beside her, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. The air around her vibrated faintly like static electricity. Her breathing eased slightly, her glow stabilizing. Outside, the hunters circled, their blue lights flashing through the snow. The cabin groaned under the storm, and Daniel knew the night was far from over. The signs of danger were everywhere, outside in the woods, inside in the mystery of Elira's power, and in his own heart as he realized something terrifying. Helping her might cost him his life, but leaving her to die would cost him something even greater. The cabin walls shook as the storm pressed harder, but it was not only the wind that made the wooden beams creak. Outside, the hunters circled. Their hum rose and fell like a machine sniffing for life. Blue lights flashed through the cracks in the window, searching, scanning. Daniel sat beside Elira, his rifle across his lap. His heart beat heavy, but he forced his breath to stay calm. The fire burned strong, throwing warmth across the room, but he knew the flames also betrayed them. The hunters could sense it. Elira opened her eyes slowly. Her glowing patterns flickered like fading embers. She whispered, her voice almost broken. "Not safe. Here, must go." Daniel frowned. "Go? Out there? You'll freeze. And those things." He stopped as the sound of metal scraped against the cabin wall. The hunters were closer than ever. Elira shook her head, her silver hair falling across her face. "Stay. Die. Move. Chance." Daniel clenched his jaw. He looked around his cabin, the place he had built with his own hands. Every chair, every shelf carried years of memory. This was his home, his only shelter. Now it was a cage. If they stayed, the hunters would tear it apart. He looked at her fragile form. "Where? Where do we go?" Elira's glowing eyes met his. She pressed a weak hand against her chest, then pointed toward the forest. "Ship. Broken. Parts. Hidden. Need. You." Daniel shook his head. "In this storm? It's suicide." Her voice grew sharp, filled with urgency. "Hunters follow me always. If ship fixed, I go. They stop. You live." The meaning cut deep. If he helped her reach her ship and repair it, she could escape. And maybe the hunters would leave him, alone. But to do that, he would have to step out into the storm with her. He would have to risk his life for someone he barely knew. Daniel's mind screamed against the idea. He could stay here, fight with his rifle, hide until the hunters gave up. But another part of him, the part that had carried her inside, that had seen the fear in her glowing eyes, knew he couldn't let her die. The hunters struck the wall again. A sharp metallic thud rattled the wood. Elira flinched, her glow pulsing, brighter. "Choose," she whispered. Daniel closed his eyes for a moment. Then he stood, pulling on his heavy coat. "Damn it," he muttered. He grabbed an extra blanket and wrapped it around Elira. "If we're doing this, we do it now." Her lips curved into the faintest smile, weak but real. She whispered, "Thank you." Daniel helped her stand. She was lighter than air, her body trembling, her legs weak. He pulled her close, wrapping an arm around her waist. Her skin buzzed against him, electric but strangely warm. He realized then what she had meant. His warmth fed her, gave her strength. Together they moved to the door. Daniel blew out the fire, plunging the cabin into darkness. The hunter's hum outside grew sharper, confused for a moment. Daniel whispered, "Stay quiet. Stay close." He opened the door a crack. The storm howled in, freezing air biting at his face. Snow swirled wildly, almost blinding. He pulled Elira into the night, shutting the door behind them. The forest was alive with shadows and light. The hunter's blue beams cut through the storm, moving like eyes searching for prey. Daniel's boots sank deep into the snow as he half-carried Elira down the slope. "Where?" he whispered harshly. Elira pointed weakly through the trees. "North, ridge." Daniel nodded and pushed forward. The snow stung his face, and every step was heavy. The storm was merciless. But Elira clung to him, her glow brighter now, as if his nearness kept her alive. Behind them, the hum grew louder. The hunters had noticed. Blue light swept across the forest, closer, faster. Daniel's chest tightened. He forced himself to keep moving, each step a battle. The trees bent under the weight of snow, their branches cracking in the wind. Elira's faint voice guided him. "Left. Rocks. Safe path." He followed her directions, weaving through the forest, his heart hammering. But the hunters were faster. The hum grew sharper, and through the storm he saw one of them. Tall, thin, glowing with cold blue light, its body like metal and glass. It moved with unnatural grace, scanning the snow. Daniel pressed Elira against a tree and raised his rifle. The hunter paused, its glowing head turning toward them. For a breathless moment, Daniel thought it had seen them. Then Elira touched his arm, her voice soft. No fight. Warmth. Shield. Daniel wanted to argue, but her glowing eyes begged him to trust. He lowered the rifle slowly and held her tighter. Her skin pulsed with light against his chest, and somehow the hunter turned away. Its head tilted, scanning the ground, but then it drifted past them, vanishing into the storm. Daniel exhaled hard, his body shaking. What the hell just happened? Elira whispered. Together, they can't see. Your warmth hides me. The realization hit him. Alone, she was a beacon. But with him, her light mixed with his, and the hunters could not sense her. His choice to stay with her had become her only shield. They moved again, step by step, deeper into the forest. The storm raged, the hunters searched, and Daniel's legs ached with every heavy step. But in his heart, something had changed. He no longer thought of Elira as a stranger who had fallen at his door. She was his responsibility now, and maybe, just maybe, his only chance at survival. The storm screamed louder, snow twisting like a living wall around them. Daniel pushed forward through the drifts, his arm locked around Elira. Her body was light, but trembling, her glowing patterns flickering weaker with every step. The hunter's hum echoed behind them, rising and falling always closer. Daniel's boots sank deep into the snow. His breath came out in sharp clouds. How much farther? He shouted over the wind. Elira lifted a shaking hand, pointing through the storm. Cliff. Other side. Ship. Daniel narrowed his eyes. The forest ahead was thick, the trees bending under heavy snow. Beyond that, he could barely see the outline of a ridge. His chest tightened. Could he get her there before the hunters closed in? Behind them, a blue light swept across the trees. Daniel froze, pulling Elira down behind a fallen log. The hum grew louder. One of the hunters moved past, tall and thin, its body glowing faint blue. Its head turned slowly, scanning the ground. Daniel's grip on the rifle tightened. His instincts screamed to shoot, but Elira touched his arm, shaking her head. Her whisper was weak, but urgent. No fight. Hide. Daniel's jaw clenched. He held her close, pulling the blanket tighter around her. Her skin pulsed with faint light, but as he pressed her against him, the glow softened. The hunter paused. It tilted its head as if sniffing the air, then drifted away into the storm. Daniel exhaled hard, his body shaking. We can't keep running forever. Elira's eyes opened, dim but determined. Close. Ship. Need parts. Then, gone. Daniel nodded. He forced his legs to move, carrying her again through the snow. The storm bit into his face and the cold clawed at his bones, but he pushed on. Every step felt heavier than the last. The forest thinned at last. The ridge loomed ahead, jagged rocks covered in snow. But before they reached it, a sharp metallic cry cut through the storm. Daniel's blood ran cold. Another hunter appeared in the clearing, its long body gleaming like ice. Blue light glowed in its chest, pulsing with power. It turned its head toward them, and this time it didn't drift away. Elira gasped. Her markings glowed brighter in fear. They see now. The hunter moved with terrifying speed, crossing the snow in long, smooth strides. Its arms unfolded, thin and sharp like blades. Daniel's heart pounded. He raised the rifle and fired. The shot cracked through the storm. The bullet struck the hunter's chest, but instead of falling, it only staggered. Sparks flew and the hum grew louder, angrier. Run! Daniel shouted. He pulled Elira with him, stumbling toward the ridge. The hunter followed, its movements faster than any machine Daniel had ever seen. Snow exploded around them as another blue beam cut through the storm. Daniel ducked low, dragging Elira into the shadow of a boulder. His breath came fast, his chest burning. The hunter's light swept across the rocks, searching. Elira clutched his arm, her glowing eyes wide with fear. Shield, she whispered. Daniel pulled her close again, pressing her against his chest. Her glow softened and the light from the hunter passed over them, hesitating. For a moment it seemed to lose their trail. But then, as if sensing something deeper, it turned back. Daniel's stomach dropped. "It's not working." Elira's voice broke. "They learn." The hunter raised one of its arms. Blue energy sparked from the blade-like limb, building into a crackling light. Daniel's instinct screamed. He grabbed Elira and rolled them both into the snow just as the energy lashed out, striking the boulder. The rock shattered into glowing shards, spraying the ground. Daniel's ears rang. His body ached, but he forced himself up. "We can't stop here." He dragged Elira toward the ridge, stumbling through the snow. The hunter followed, its hum rising into a scream. Another beam of energy cut past, slicing through a tree. The trunk fell, crashing into the snow with a thunderous crack. They reached the base of the ridge. Rocks jutted upward, sharp and steep. Daniel's legs burned, but he pulled Elira higher step by step. The storm whipped around them, the wind clawing like icy hands. The hunter climbed after them, its body moving like liquid metal, smooth and unstoppable. Elira's glow pulsed stronger now, as if the danger fueled her. She pressed a weak hand against Daniel's chest. Her voice trembled. "Trust me." Before he could answer, her markings flared with light. Bright streams of energy burst from her skin, wrapping around them both. Daniel gasped. The world shifted. The storm dimmed. The hunter's glow faded. For a heartbeat, they were invisible. The hunter paused below them, scanning wildly. Its head turned, searching, but it no longer saw them. Daniel stared at Elira in shock. "What did you—" Her voice was faint. "Your warmth. My strength. Together. Cloak." Daniel looked down the ridge. The hunter circled below, confused. But the glow around Elira dimmed quickly, fading as her strength drained. She collapsed against him, her body trembling. Daniel held her close, his mind spinning. She had risked everything to hide them, and now she was weaker than ever. He lifted her into his arms and pushed upward, climbing the last stretch of the ridge. His muscles screamed, but he didn't stop. At the top, he saw it through the storm, a broken shape half buried in snow. Strange metal, bent and cracked, glowing faintly with the same blue light as Elira. Her ship. Daniel stumbled forward, carrying her the last few steps. Her eyes opened weakly, a flicker of hope in them. There. Home. Behind them, the hunter's hum rose again, sharper, louder. They had found the trail. Daniel's chest tightened. They had reached the ship, but escape would not be easy. The hunters were coming fast. The escape had only begun. The ridge was silent for only a moment. The broken ship lay half buried in the snow, its silver surface cracked, wires hanging loose, glowing faintly with dying blue light. Daniel stumbled toward it, carrying Elira in his arms. Her head rested, weakly on his chest, her glowing patterns dim and fading. He lowered her gently beside the wreckage. Her trembling hand touched the cold metal, and for a second the ship responded. Small sparks of light spread across its surface. Her voice was faint, barely more than a whisper. "Home. Broken. Need. Fireheart." Daniel frowned. He glanced at the ship, then at her. "What is a fireheart, Elira?" She pressed a hand to her chest. Her markings glowed faintly under her skin. "Here, warmth inside. All of us have. Hunters. Take it. Make us empty." Daniel's stomach tightened. The hunters were not just chasing her. They were harvesting her people's very life. Her warmth was more than heat. It was her soul, her energy, her essence. Without it, she would die. The hum of the hunters rose again, sharper now. Daniel looked back down the ridge. Blue lights moved closer, weaving through the storm. They were coming fast. Elira's hand clutched his sleeve. Her glowing eyes met his. "One chance. Fireheart in me. Enough to wake ship. But if I give, I die." Daniel's chest tightened. "No. There has to be another way." She shook her head slowly. "If ship wakes, I go. Hunters follow me away. You live. If not, they find you too. The truth struck him like ice. If she sacrificed herself, she could save him. If not, they would both die here. Daniel's throat burned. He had lived alone for years, never needing anyone, never letting anyone close. But Elira had changed that in a single night. Her fear, her trust, her strange glow. They had broken through the walls he had built around his life. He grabbed her trembling hand. No, you're not dying here. Elira's weak smile flickered. Warmth, strong in you, but not mine to keep. The hunter's hum grew louder. Daniel could see their tall, thin shapes moving through the storm below. Blue lights flashed against the snow, closer, closer. His heart pounded. He looked at the ship. He looked at Elira. Then he made a choice. Daniel pulled her into his arms, holding her close. If you need warmth to live, then take mine, whatever it costs. Her glowing eyes widened, shocked. No. Too much. You die. Daniel's voice was steady. Better me than you. You don't belong here. You have a world to save. I don't. Tears shimmered in Elira's strange eyes. For the first time, she looked not like an alien but like a woman, fragile, afraid, and full of sorrow. Why, help me, Daniel's voice broke. Because no one should die alone in the snow. Her lips trembled. She pressed her glowing hand against his chest. Heat spread between them, sharp and electric. Daniel gasped as energy poured out of him, into her. His vision blurred, his strength drained, but Elira's markings glowed brighter, brighter until she shone like a star. The ship answered, its cracked surface lit with blue fire, spreading like veins of light across the wreckage. The hum of power rose, deep and alive. The hunters reached the ridge, their tall, thin forms glowing with cold blue light. They raised their arms, energy crackling, but the ship roared awake. A blast of blue fire shot out, knocking the hunters back. The snow shook with the force. Daniel collapsed to his knees, weak, his breath shallow. Elira caught him, her body glowing with new strength. Her voice was strong now, filled with power. You gave me your warmth. I give it back. She pressed her forehead against his. The glow from her body flowed into him, warm and alive. Daniel's chest filled with heat, his strength returning. He gasped, life rushing back into his veins. The hunters screamed their metallic cry, climbing again. But Elira stood tall now. Her ship lifted from the snow, rising with her strength. She turned to Daniel, her eyes burning bright. Time to end this. The ship's light flared, blasting the ridge with fire. The hunters dissolved in the storm, their cold glow snuffed out by Elira's living warmth. Silence fell. Only the storm remained. Elira turned to Daniel, her glowing hand resting against his cheek. You saved me. You saved my people. I will not forget. Daniel's throat tightened. What about me? Her eyes softened. Hunters follow me always. If I stay, you die. I must go. Daniel's chest ached. He wanted to beg her to stay, but he saw the truth in her eyes. She didn't belong here. Her fight was bigger than this mountain, bigger than him. She leaned close, her voice soft. You gave me warmth. Keep it. Live. The ship's doors opened, light spilling out. Elira stepped inside, her glow merging with the ship's fire. The craft rose higher, breaking free from the snow. Daniel stood in the storm, watching as the ship vanished into the night sky. The blue light faded, leaving only darkness and snow. The mountain was silent again. But inside Daniel's chest, something new burned. Warmth that would never fade.